Showing off Mistress in public, a billionaire is shocked when his pregnant wife arrives with a CEO. A hush falls over the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers reflecting the tension coursing through the air. At the center of it all stands Jonathan Colton, a self-made millionaire in a sharp tuxedo, smugly introducing his elegant mistress to society. Guests gasp at this brazen display, whispering in discreet corners. Suddenly, the doors swing open and a very pregnant young woman steps in Jonathan's wife, Scarlett. But that's not the only surprise. Flanking her is the elusive billionaire CEO, Ethan Blackwell, who seems determined to protect her at all costs. The scandal is about to erupt, and no one in the room will emerge unscathed. The Crystal Renaissance Hotel boasted one of the largest and most opulent ballrooms in the city, its expansive marble floors polished to a mirror-like gleam. Flower arrangements, flown in from Amsterdam, perfumed the air with delicate hints of tulips and lilies. Hundreds of guests, dressed in their finest attire, mingled, air-kissing and exchanging pleasantries about stock prices, private yachts, and upcoming investment opportunities. This was the annual Bright Futures Gala, a major event for the city's elite, known for raising millions of dollars for underprivileged children's education. Jonathan Colton, the evening's most anticipated host, was a man of tall stature and commanding presence. He had climbed the ranks from a humble background, propelled by sheer ambition. Not so long ago, he was just another junior executive at Ambrotech. But a stroke of luck, some said cunning manipulation, catapulted him to the top when he acquired a failing software startup for pennies and transformed it into a digital powerhouse. By the time he turned 35, Jonathan's net worth had soared into the 9-figure range. Yet, for all his success, there was an undercurrent of arrogance that clung to him. Tonight, it was on full display. Against the grand setting of glittering chandeliers and a curated orchestra playing Mozart, he walked onto the stage with a stunning brunette on his arm, Cassandra Monroe. Rumors had circulated about her for months. Some said she was his new marketing director. Others hinted she was a mysterious socialite from Europe. The truth, as the cunning sparkle in Jonathan's eye revealed, was far more scandalous. Cassandra wore a sleek crimson gown that hugged her every curve, making whispers erupt among onlookers. It was an audacious statement, especially since everyone knew Jonathan was a married man. Still, his wife Scarlett Colton was conspicuously absent. Jonathan tapped the microphone, his voice carrying easily over the low murmur of the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at the Bright Futures Gala. We have a spectacular evening prepared for you with an exciting announcement later tonight. Please enjoy the festivities and remember that every dollar raised tonight goes directly to empowering our future generations. He offered his arm to Cassandra, leading her down the steps, where they were immediately greeted by the city's biggest power players. One of them, James Hartford, CEO of Hartford Industries, clapped Jonathan on the shoulder and raised an eyebrow at Cassandra. "Well, you certainly don't waste time, Jonathan," James joked, half under his breath, but loud enough for a few eavesdroppers to hear. Jonathan only smirked. He loved the attention, even if it skirted the edges of impropriety. He thrived on speculation and envy. Little did he realize that his carefully orchestrated spectacle was about to be shattered in ways he never could have imagined. For Scarlett, his wife, now 6 months pregnant, was already on her way, accompanied by none other than Ethan Blackwell, the reclusive billionaire CEO rumored to be involved in hush-hush philanthropic projects. Jonathan might have thought this night was his to orchestrate, but in truth, fate and karma were converging and the performance was about to spin wildly out of his control. Several hours before the gala, Scarlett Colton sat in the living room of their sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city. The estate was a testament to Jonathan's success. Tall pillars, a winding driveway, and manicured lawns fit for a palace. Scarlett, however, felt none of the usual comfort she once derived from the airy rooms and sunlit gardens. 6 months pregnant, she had noticed Jonathan's gradual detachment. The man who used to rub her feet and fetch her midnight snacks now rarely slept in the same bed. He was always busy with business dinners that stretched into the early morning hours. Scarlett tried to rationalize it, believing it was just a phase of stressful work commitments. But the evidence to the contrary had become glaring. Scarlett had initially planned to skip the Bright Futures Gala. She was tired, emotionally and physically, and the pregnancy hormones magnified her stress. Yet, an unexpected phone call changed everything. It came from Natalie Cruz, one of her closest childhood friends, who also worked as a legal advisor in Jonathan's company. Natalie's voice trembled as she urged Scarlett to attend the gala. "Scarlett, I don't mean to alarm you, but Jonathan's planning to bring someone tonight. Someone he's been seeing. You have to be there," Natalie whispered, clearly terrified of the consequences of speaking up. Scarlett's heart hammered as she listened, her hand flying instinctively to her belly. She'd suspected Jonathan of infidelity for a while, but the finality of it being paraded in public was too humiliating to imagine. A swirl of emotions, anger, hurt, betrayal surged through her. She hung up the call without replying, tears stinging her eyes. For the next hour, Scarlett stood staring out the window of her lavish living room. The setting sun cast a golden glow on the rose bushes Jonathan had once planted as a romantic gesture. How things had changed. She clenched her fist against the glass, the betrayal burning in her veins. Just then, her butler, Bernard, discreetly cleared his throat to announce a visitor. Surprised, Scarlett turned to find Ethan Blackwell himself stepping into her home. Ethan's presence was both unexpected and comforting. They had a history. He had once mentored Jonathan and, in turn, formed a friendship with Scarlett. But over the years, Ethan pulled away from the limelight, rarely making public appearances. "Scarlett," he said softly, concern etched into his features, "I heard some unsettling news about Jonathan. I want to help you." She couldn't bring herself to hide her tears. "He's taking a mistress. Tonight, in public. I can't believe he'd do this to me, especially now." Ethan hesitated, then gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You shouldn't go through this alone. If you decide to show up, I'll be by your side. You have my full support." Scarlett swallowed hard, her resolve crystallizing. No longer would she be the dutiful wife who waited in silence. If Jonathan wanted to parade his mistress in front of the city's elite, she would meet him head-on, and she would not be alone. Within 2 hours, Scarlett donned a stunning midnight blue maternity gown. She gazed at her reflection, noticing the radiant glow that pregnancy and simmering determination gave her. Strength filled her veins. She stepped into Ethan's sleek black Bentley, and together they headed to the gala, not knowing that their appearance would set in motion a chain of events that would forever change their lives. Cassandra Monroe was no stranger to the allure of wealth and power. Born as Cassie Marsh in a modest suburb outside London, she learned at a young age how quickly fortune could turn against you. Her father lost his job when she was 12. Her mother struggled with a chronic illness. Poverty knocked at their door, bringing desperation along with it. That was when Cassandra vowed never to be powerless again. She discovered her natural gifts in her late teens, a sharp mind, keen intuition, and undeniable beauty. By 20, she was dating older, successful men. Each relationship elevated her station in life, each man teaching her valuable lessons about business, connections, and manipulation. Cassandra soon realized that the real currency in high society wasn't just money, it was secrets. So she became adept at uncovering them. After a string of relationships that ended lucratively, she set her sights on international travel. She frequented exclusive gatherings in Monaco, Hong Kong, and Dubai. Eventually, she made her way to the United States, connecting with real estate magnate Robert Klein in New York, then with a shipping tycoon in Los Angeles. However, these affairs were stepping stones. Cassandra was in search of a jackpot, someone she could latch onto for longer, someone with a hunger for status that matched her own ambition. Then she met Jonathan Colton at a private investor conference in San Francisco. She wasn't taken in by his good looks alone. What drew her was his restless ambition and the way he commanded a room. Their flirtation began discreetly, long conversations in hotel bars, shared rides to expensive dinners. Jonathan was both brash and brilliant, a combination that enthralled her. He wasn't just rich, he was on the cusp of exploding into the upper echelons of global wealth. In him, she saw an opportunity and a kindred spirit. Jonathan, bored with his seemingly perfect marriage, became enchanted by Cassandra's daring and sophistication. He relished how she could converse about the stock market and global politics one moment, then charm an entire table of VIPs the next. But Cassandra had ambitions beyond being just a discreet mistress. She wanted the spotlight. She wanted influence. She wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with the city's elite, not hide in the shadows of luxury hotels. So, when Jonathan proposed she accompany him to the Bright Futures Gala, she agreed without hesitation. He practically boasted that it would be their grand coming out as a power couple, though he never mentioned how he planned to navigate the scandal of still being married to Scarlett. Cassandra, for her part, reveled in the thought of being admired by the city's most influential. She also suspected that Jonathan might propose an even more lucrative arrangement soon. Standing next to Jonathan on stage, Cassandra Munro felt that she had finally arrived. The hush of scandalized onlookers only fed her ego. She was determined to use this night to vault herself further up the social ladder. What she didn't anticipate was the sudden arrival of the very woman whose place she aimed to usurp, escorted by none other than one of the few men in this world who could overshadow Jonathan Colton. Long before Jonathan Colton donned custom-tailored suits and flashed million-dollar smiles for the cameras, he was simply John from the outskirts of Oklahoma City. The son of two hard-working middle-class parents, Jonathan showed an early knack for negotiation. He was the kid who'd turn a simple lemonade stand into a mini franchise by persuading classmates to pitch in for a cut of the profits. Through scholarships and part-time jobs, Jonathan made it to a reputable business school where his ambition hardened into a single-minded drive. He entered every competition, joined every student business club, and networked relentlessly. His peers admired him, but some also whispered that he was too aggressive, too cutthroat in his approach. After college, he landed an entry-level position at Ambrotech, a mid-sized tech firm. His superiors noted his relentless energy and placed him on projects that required quick turnarounds and creative solutions. Over the years, Jonathan acquired a small but formidable network of mentors. One of them was Ethan Blackwell, a venture capitalist at the time. Ethan recognized Jonathan's potential and often invited him to high-stakes meetings, teaching him the nuances of reading a room, persuading investors, and maneuvering out of precarious situations. But as Jonathan ascended, so did his ego. A crucial turning point came when he was tipped off about an ailing startup specializing in machine learning software for e-commerce. While other investors saw a risky proposition, Jonathan saw a gold mine. He scraped together capital partly from his own savings, partly from smaller backers, and purchased the startup for a fraction of its potential worth. Over the next few years, Jonathan pivoted the company to develop advanced consumer analytics systems. Fortune smiled, and so did the market. Contracts poured in from major retailers worldwide. Jonathan's net worth skyrocketed. Glitzy events, lavish trips, and top-tier real estate soon followed. So did Scarlett. They met when she worked as a PR consultant at a gala where Jonathan was a keynote speaker. Her warmth and genuine nature cut through Jonathan's hardened shell of ambition. They fell in love quickly, and even Ethan Blackwell, who had grown wary of Jonathan's aggressive tactics, was touched by how Scarlett seemed to soften him. For a time, Jonathan appeared genuinely happy. The marriage was a high society event, elegant, exclusive, and the talk of tabloids. But the success never stopped fueling Jonathan's hunger. He threw himself deeper into business expansions, forging deals in Asia and the Middle East, rarely coming home before midnight. Gradually, the affection he once showered on Scarlett waned, replaced by a restless dissatisfaction. He began to resent her gentle reminders to balance work and home life, seeing them as constraints on his unstoppable ascent. When Cassandra Monroe entered his life, her calculating ambition matched his own. Their liaison became an intoxicating escape from the domesticity he felt was holding him back. And so, at the Bright Futures Gala, Jonathan was ready to make a statement with Cassandra. But the memory of the man he once was hard-working, bright, and lovingly devoted still flickered behind his eyes. The question was whether that trace of conscience would matter when he came face to face with his pregnant wife's arrival, accompanied by the very mentor he once idolized. During the tense drive to the Crystal Renaissance Hotel, Scarlett inhaled deeply, focusing on calming her nerves. She refused to show up in shambles. If anything, she wanted to appear composed, poised, even regal. For too long, she'd played the forgiving wife, offering empathy and endless chances. Tonight would be different. Seated beside her in the sleek Bentley, Ethan Blackwell asked softly, "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Confronting Jonathan in front of everyone won't be easy. Scarlett squared her shoulders, her hands folded protectively over her growing belly. "I have to. I can't let him think he can just flaunt his affair without any repercussions. If I hide, he wins. I'm done being a bystander in my own life." From her clutch, she removed an envelope, a manila file thick with papers. This was her secret weapon, meticulously gathered over the past month. When doubts about Jonathan began to swirl, she hired a private investigator, not just to document his affair, but also to look deeper into his business dealings. The results, delivered only days ago, left her shell-shocked. Fraudulent transactions, undisclosed shell companies, and questionable offshore accounts. Jonathan was dancing on a knife's edge of legality. If these details went public, it could ruin him. Scarlett, however, didn't intend to ruin him yet. She merely wanted to confront him with the knowledge that she was no fool. If Jonathan thought he could quietly divorce her later and push her aside, he was sorely mistaken. This was her insurance policy, for herself and their unborn child. Ethan glanced at the file, recognizing the official seals and financial statements. His expression turned grave. "This is serious. If the SEC or any law enforcement agency saw these documents," Scarlett pursed her lips, "I know. But it's the only leverage I have. I'm not planning to go public unless he forces my hand. For once, he's going to face the consequences of his actions." Ethan nodded, both admiration and concern on his face. He had once seen Jonathan as a protégé, a man brimming with potential who might change the world for the better. Now, that same man stood on the precipice of scandal and possibly prison. Still, Ethan's primary loyalty was to Scarlett and the child she carried. He secretly hoped that tonight's confrontation might jolt Jonathan back to some semblance of decency. As they pulled up to the hotel's entrance, paparazzi cameras flashed wildly. They expected to snap photos of celebrities and influencers, but spotting Ethan Blackwell stepping out alongside, Jonathan's visibly pregnant wife, sent the crowd into a frenzy. Microphones extended, cameras clicked, shouted questions filled the air. Scarlett took one last steadying breath, placed her hand in Ethan's, and let him guide her up the red carpet. She could practically feel the tension in the air as she entered the lobby. Eyes darted in their direction, and whispers quickly spread. Scarlett's heart pounded, but her gaze was steely with resolve. Soon she would come face to face with Jonathan and his mistress, and when that moment arrived, she intended to stand her ground, armed with the truth and a plan to reclaim her dignity. Ethan Blackwell was a name whispered among the upper echelons of finance and enterprise. A decade ago, his investment firm, Blackwell Capital, had shaken the tech world by funding groundbreaking startups, including ventures that shaped modern e-commerce and artificial intelligence. Ethan's uncanny intuition for picking winners made him a legend. However, a sudden tragedy, his younger sister's fatal car accident, pushed him into seclusion. He announced a full retreat from public life, pivoting to philanthropic work in remote corners of the globe. No one had expected to see him at the Bright Futures Gala, especially not in the role of protector to Scarlett Colton. Rumors circulated among the guests. Was he and Scarlett romantically involved? Did this indicate some grand business alliance? Others recalled that Ethan had once been Jonathan's mentor, which only added more fuel to the swirling intrigue. Upon entering the ballroom, Ethan immediately commanded attention. Tall, lean, and impeccably dressed, his quiet charisma challenged Jonathan's showy arrogance. While Jonathan had the bravado of new money, Ethan embodied old-school class. He guided Scarlett through the crowd, politely declining questions from reporters, focusing solely on her well-being. Scarlett was grateful for his presence. Despite the swirling sea of gazes and gossip, she felt a sense of calm emanating from him. Her earlier anxiety receded, replaced by determination. Together, they presented an image of formidable unity, the expectant wife wronged by her husband, shielded by a powerful ally. At the far side of the ballroom, Jonathan and Cassandra were engaged in conversation with James Hartford and a few top-tier investors. When Jonathan caught sight of Scarlett's arrival with Ethan, his confident grin faltered. For a split second, panic flickered in his eyes. He recovered quickly, planting a tight smile on his face, but Cassandra felt the stiffness in his arm as he gripped her elbow. "Ethan is here?" Jonathan whispered, voice taut. "Why on earth would he?" Cassandra raised an eyebrow. "Who is he to you?" "My former mentor," Jonathan muttered. "And that's my wife with him." From across the room, Ethan met Jonathan's gaze, giving a polite nod that carried an undercurrent of disapproval. Scarlett, too, lifted her chin defiantly, clearly intending to walk right up to the man who had betrayed her. Cassandra quickly gleaned the gravity of the situation. If Ethan Blackwell was involved, this was no simple marital spat. Jonathan exhaled, shaking off the shock. He placed a possessive hand on Cassandra's waist, then, with forced nonchalance, led her toward the newly arrived duo. A hush spread among the onlookers. The four stood within arm's length, an invisible storm of tension crackling in the air. Jonathan, wearing a strained smile, spoke first. "Well, Scarlett, I didn't know you'd be coming tonight." His gaze darted to Ethan, then back to her. "And you've brought quite a distinguished guest." Scarlett's expression was calm, yet cold. "Hello, Jonathan. I hope I'm not intruding on your big night." In that moment, Ethan gave the slightest nod to Scarlett, indicating he was there for her, no matter what might happen next. And thus, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundation of Jonathan's carefully constructed world. Onlookers sensed the drama unfolding in real time. Like spectators in an arena, they watched Jonathan Colton and his pregnant wife stand toe to toe, each supported by their respective companions. In the background, the gala's string quartet played a piece that felt oddly discordant given the tension spilling into every corner of the ballroom. Scarlett felt her pulse thrum as she locked eyes with Jonathan. Memories of their wedding day, quiet nights by the fireplace, and the moment they discovered she was pregnant crashed into her mind like tidal waves. Yet the man before her now looked more like a stranger than her once loving husband. Jonathan forced a charming grin. "Scarlett, you look radiant. I'm surprised to see you here. I thought you were resting at home." His attempt at small talk was almost laughable, but Cassandra, arms wrapped around his, cut in. "Jonathan invited me to help him host. After all, it's an important night for the Bright Futures Foundation, and I'm deeply passionate about philanthropy." Her saccharine tone only fueled Scarlett's anger. She felt her nails dig into her palms, but she kept her voice steady. "How kind of you, Cassandra. I'm sure your passion for Jonathan's affairs goes beyond philanthropy." A murmur spread among the spectators. Cassandra stiffened, her eyes flashing. Jonathan's smile vanished, replaced by a warning glare. But if he thought Scarlett would cower under that look, he was mistaken. Scarlett continued, now addressing Jonathan directly. "I've come here because I deserve to see who you're parading around, and also to let you know that neither I nor our child will be cast aside." Beside her, Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her arm. He spoke, his voice even yet carrying authority. "Jonathan, I'm disappointed. This is not the man I once mentored. This public humiliation of your wife is beneath you, beneath everything we work toward." Jonathan's jaw tensed. Something in Ethan's words struck a chord, triggering a flicker of guilt before his face hardened again. He glanced around at the crowd. Maintaining his image was paramount. "I think we should continue this conversation in private," Jonathan hissed, lowering his voice. "Scarlett, Ethan, let's step out onto the terrace." The watchers parted like the Red Sea as the four of them, along with a handful of the most curious observers, walked toward the ornate double doors leading outside. A hush fell over the main ballroom, though the whispers and frantic texts were sure to continue in their wake. On the terrace, the city lights twinkled in the distance, a sharp contrast to the darkness gathering between them. A gentle breeze blew, but it provided little relief from the simmering tension. Jonathan turned on Scarlett, frustration evident in his tone. "Why drag Ethan here? Why embarrass me in public?" Scarlett's eyes welled with tears, though her voice remained fierce. "Embarrass you? You're the one flaunting a mistress while I'm pregnant with your child. Did you really think I would stand by quietly?" Cassandra attempted to intervene, but Ethan silenced her with a piercing stare. He then addressed Jonathan. "If you have any respect left for Scarlett, you'll handle this situation with dignity." For a moment, Jonathan's shoulders sagged, remorse flickering across his face. But Cassandra took his arm, her presence a reminder of the path he'd chosen. Caught between guilt and pride, Jonathan found himself at a crossroads with the entire city, and most importantly, Scarlett, waiting to see which side he would take. In the end, the confrontation on the terrace was mercifully brief. Cassandra played the role of outraged girlfriend, though many sensed her anger stemmed more from the threat to her own ambitions rather than genuine love for Jonathan. Scarlett, tears threatening to spill, turned away, refusing to let the mistress see her vulnerability. Ethan escorted her from the terrace, offering a dignified exit from a deeply undignified situation. The moment they stepped back into the ballroom, a wave of curious eyes and hushed conversations greeted them. Scarlett's heart pounded with a mix of rage, heartbreak, and a kind of newfound determination she hadn't known she possessed. She clung to Ethan's arm, grateful for his unwavering support. Jonathan and Cassandra remained on the terrace, the tension between them tangible. Cassandra hissed, "That was humiliating. How could you not warn me your wife would be here pregnant? No less, and with Ethan Blackwell of all people." Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. I had no idea Scarlett was coming. Believe me, this wasn't my plan." He glared at Cassandra, momentarily questioning his decisions. "And don't forget, you insisted on making our relationship public. Well, this is the result." Cassandra's eyes narrowed. "So you're blaming me now? Did you see the way? Ethan looked at you. He could destroy you. You better hope he doesn't start sniffing around your finances or your business affairs." A flicker of fear crossed Jonathan's face. Cassandra was right. If Ethan turned his considerable resources against him, the repercussions could be catastrophic. Resolute, Jonathan straightened, smoothing his suit. "Let's not cause a scene. We'll finish our duties here, then talk privately about our next move." Inside, the program for the gala pressed on. The MC took the stage, inviting donors to pledge their support for the foundation. People cheered as large sums of money flashed across a digital billboard. Yet behind the philanthropic facade, the real drama of the evening captured everyone's attention. Social media buzzed with photos of Scarlett and Ethan's arrival, fueling scandalous headlines like "CEO Ethan Blackwell rescues heartbroken wife from millionaire's affair." Scarlett and Ethan found a secluded corner near the refreshment tables. A few acquaintances approached with polite concern, but most kept a wary distance. Scarlett accepted a glass of water from a waiter, though she scarcely touched it. She felt cold, despite the warmth of the crowded room. Ethan leaned closer, speaking so only she could hear. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, but I'm worried about your stress levels. Maybe we should leave." Scarlett hesitated. She was emotionally drained, yet something in her rebelled at the idea of retreat. "I need to show him that he can't scare me away. I'll stay a bit longer, at least until the main announcements are over." Ethan nodded, respecting her decision. In truth, he admired her more than ever. A flicker of guilt tugged at his conscience. He had contributed to Jonathan's rise, never suspecting how power could corrupt him. Now, Ethan silently resolved to be Scarlett's shield against whatever storms Jonathan might unleash. Thus, as the gala continued, an undercurrent of anticipation coursed through the guests. Everyone wondered, would Scarlett exit in tears, or would she remain unbreakable under the pressure? Would Jonathan's star fall after such a brazen display of infidelity, or would he emerge unscathed, buttressed by wealth and influence? Only time and perhaps Ethan Blackwell's next move would tell. In the days following the gala, rumors swirled like a tempest. Some tabloids ran dramatic headlines, "Billionaire Showdown," while high society gossip columns featured anonymous sources gleefully spilling details about Jonathan's brazen public reveal of Cassandra. Scarlett, though mortified, found solace in the flood of supportive messages she received from old friends and even strangers who empathized with her plight. Amid the chaos, a small circle of unexpected allies rallied to Scarlett's side. Natalie Cruz, her childhood friend and legal advisor within Jonathan's company, was the first to step up. After her initial warning call, Natalie doubled down on assistance. She arranged for Scarlett to meet with top-tier divorce attorneys just in case, and helped compile more evidence on Jonathan's questionable business dealings. If it came to a legal battle, Scarlett would be well prepared. Then there was Marianne DuPont, an elegant philanthropist who had been a mentor to Scarlett early in her PR career. Marianne had always been fond of Scarlett's warmth and dedication to charitable causes. Outraged by Jonathan's public disrespect, Marianne used her influence in social circles to rally moral support. She ensured that whenever Jonathan tried to spin the narrative that Scarlett was unstable or jealous, he met walls of disapproval from key figures in the community. But perhaps the most surprising ally was James Hartford, the CEO, who had once been Jonathan's close confidant. After witnessing Jonathan's public humiliation of Scarlett, James reconsidered their friendship. He reached out to Ethan, expressing disbelief at Jonathan's actions and offering to connect Scarlett with financial experts who could discreetly review Jonathan's holdings, ensuring Scarlett's rights would be protected should she file for separation. Scarlett felt overwhelmed by this wave of support. While she once feared being isolated and powerless in her pregnancy, she now found herself at the center of a network of concerned and resourceful friends. She quickly realized that her position was not as weak as Jonathan might have assumed. Meanwhile, Ethan maintained regular contact. He visited Scarlett at her estate, checking in on her emotional well-being and that of the growing baby. His quiet strength became a comforting constant in Scarlett's life, though a hint of scandalous rumor followed them. Some tabloids speculated on an affair, painting Ethan as the knight in shining armor stealing a millionaire's wife. Scarlett chose to ignore the gossip. She trusted Ethan's intentions were purely protective and philanthropic. He was a man who believed in setting wrongs right. Jonathan's reaction to this growing alliance was a mixture of anger and paranoia. Cassandra fanned the flames, warning him that Scarlett was gathering legal ammunition. He responded by making late-night calls to lawyers, rummaging through finances to conceal any illicit activities, and launching a private investigation into who was feeding Scarlett information. Still, Jonathan's attempts to regain control seemed to slip through his fingers. Each time he tried to orchestrate a triumphant public appearance with Cassandra, the media coverage inevitably brought up Scarlett's dignity and Ethan's philanthropic empire. Investors grew uneasy, sensing the turmoil could impact Jonathan's future business deals. Tensions escalated behind the scenes. The question now was not if there would be a reckoning, but when, and who, in the end, would hold the decisive power when it all came crashing down. For Jonathan Colton, the first real indication of looming disaster arrived in the form of a terse letter from the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC). It requested documents pertaining to several offshore accounts that Jonathan naively believed were hidden behind layers of shell corporations. Someone, somewhere, had tipped the authorities off, though he couldn't confirm who. He suspected Ethan or even Scarlett's friend Natalie. His paranoia spiked, fueling sleepless nights filled with frantic phone calls to his legal team. As if the SEC inquiry weren't enough, Jonathan's relationship with Cassandra was unraveling. She had not signed up for a man under investigation whose fortune might be seized if the allegations held up. She started missing scheduled dinner dates, citing important business of her own. Their once electrifying connection turned tense, each accusing the other of disloyalty. Cassandra hinted that she could always cut her losses and walk away if Jonathan's empire showed signs of collapse. Caught between a looming legal crisis and a mistress who was losing patience, Jonathan's carefully crafted facade began to crack. His employees whispered about his erratic behavior, abrupt firing of staff he deemed untrustworthy, impromptu meetings cancelled at the last minute, and a meltdown in front of key investors. Meanwhile, Scarlett quietly advanced her preparations. With Natalie's help, she compiled every document, text message, and photograph relevant to Jonathan's misconduct, both personal and professional. She felt torn. Part of her wanted to expose him fully, to see him answer for the betrayal he'd inflicted. Another part, however, remembered the man she had once loved. She knew destroying him completely would mean heartbreak for her child, who deserved a father free from scandal and jail cells. Still, self-preservation remained paramount. Scarlett instructed her legal team to prepare a sealed divorce filing. She only needed to give the go-ahead if Jonathan refused a fair settlement. Her unborn child's future would come first. If Jonathan tried any underhanded moves, Scarlett would be ready to strike back. Ethan, for his part, used his own extensive network of connections to ensure Scarlett's safety and peace of mind. Investigators loyal to him discreetly found more evidence of Jonathan's malfeasance, undeclared funds, insider trading whispers, and bribe-laced deals in foreign markets. Slowly, quietly, Ethan built a fortress around Scarlett's interests. He never advocated for total vengeance. He simply believed in justice and accountability. Rumors of Jonathan's downfall spread rapidly. Board members from his company began questioning his stability, floating the idea that a leadership change might be necessary to preserve their brand's reputation. This only heightened Jonathan's desperation. He was losing control over his business, over the narrative, and over the wife he once thought so meek and accommodating. Late one evening, Cassandra packed her bags, leaving only a terse note. She claimed that she couldn't risk her own future by sticking around a sinking ship. The moment Jonathan discovered her departure, he felt a surge of both betrayal and a twisted kind of relief. At least she was out of the picture, albeit leaving him alone to face the storm he had brewed. As he stood in his now too quiet penthouse, overlooking a city whose bright lights once symbolized his unstoppable rise, Jonathan realized the brutal truth. The empire he built on ambition, cunning, and a dash of deceit was collapsing, and Scarlett, whom he had underestimated, was the catalyst for it, although he couldn't decide whether to blame her or himself for his imminent crash landing. Cassandra Monroe had disappeared from Jonathan's penthouse, but her departure was far from a retreat. In a swanky suite at the Halcyon Hotel, she sipped champagne while scrolling through news articles detailing Jonathan's spiraling reputation. She contemplated her options. As much as she enjoyed the thrill of being seen on the arm of a millionaire, she had never intended to go down with his ship. Cassandra's entire lifestyle revolved around aligning herself with power and wealth. Once Jonathan's prospects started looking bleak, she initiated a calculated withdrawal. She took pains to leave behind no incriminating evidence in his residence. Every expensive handbag, every piece of jewelry he had gifted her was stowed away in a safe deposit box rented under a pseudonym. She knew from experience how quickly assets could be seized in a legal meltdown. While Jonathan fought to keep his empire from collapsing, Cassandra was already scouting her next opportunity. She had a string of connections across the globe: magnates, executives, and aristocrats who might welcome her company and strategic social skills. But one detail gnawed at her: the presence of Ethan Blackwell. His powerful aura and the respect he commanded intrigued Cassandra more than she liked to admit. She recalled how Ethan had stared her down at the gala, unimpressed, indifferent even. Men usually fell over themselves to get a second glance from Cassandra. Ethan was different, apparently unimpressed by her charms or Jonathan's theatrics. She tried to get more information about him. Rumors circulated he had old money, philanthropic ties, and an unwavering moral compass. Precisely the kind of man who rarely succumbed to the manipulations that had served Cassandra so well in the past. Yet she couldn't entirely abandon the idea of winning Ethan's favor. After all, if Jonathan's downfall was assured, a partnership with someone like Ethan Blackwell might be her next stepping stone. Through a discreet contact at Blackwell Capital, Cassandra arranged an accidental meeting at an art auction. She appeared wearing a sophisticated black dress, carrying a veneer of untroubled elegance. When Ethan arrived, however, he barely spared her a glance. He was there on philanthropic business, bidding on a set of paintings to support a local charity. Cassandra attempted casual conversation, but Ethan's responses remained polite yet distant. He knew exactly who she was and that she had contributed significantly to Scarlett's heartbreak. Undeterred, Cassandra decided to play her final card, sincerity. She cornered Ethan after he won a painting and said softly, "I never meant to hurt Scarlett. Jonathan told me a different story of their marriage, that it was already over, that she was a gold digger using his name to climb the social ladder." Ethan's blue eyes glinted with thinly veiled disdain. "So you believed him? Or is that simply the narrative that suited your ambition?" Her cheeks flushed. "I might have been naive. I see that now. But I'm not the villain everyone paints me to be. I have a genuine passion for philanthropy." "Maybe we could," Ethan cut her off with a curt shake of his head. "If you truly wish to fix what you've broken, start by apologizing to Scarlett and stay out of her way." He turned on his heel, leaving Cassandra staring after him, her carefully laid plans dissolving in a moment of unmasked rejection. In that instant, she realized Ethan Blackwell was not just immune to her charms, he was actively repelled by them. For the first time, Cassandra found herself without a straightforward path to the next rung on her social ladder, and though she still possessed her cunning, she sensed that in a world shaped by moral guardians like Ethan, her time as the queen of opportunists might be running out. As the SEC probe intensified, Jonathan faced the grim reality that he might be indicted if more incriminating evidence surfaced. Desperation led him to request a private meeting with Ethan Blackwell. Perhaps, Jonathan reasoned, his old mentor would offer a lifeline, or at least keep silent on any damning details he might know. Pride swallowed, Jonathan placed the call. They met in a glass-walled conference room at a discreet private club downtown. Jonathan arrived wearing an air of forced confidence, though dark circles under his eyes told a different story. Ethan was already there, hands folded on the mahogany table, his expression unreadable. After a moment of tense silence, Jonathan began, "I appreciate you agreeing to see me, Ethan." Ethan inclined his head. "You said it was urgent. I'm listening." Jonathan cleared his throat, words catching in his parched mouth. "Look, I know you disapprove of what happened with Scarlett, and yes, I made mistakes. But I don't deserve to lose everything. You and I have a history. You once called me a protégé." Ethan's gaze remained steady. "That was before you strayed from ethical business practices and basic decency." A flash of anger surged in Jonathan, but he fought it back, forcing calm into his voice. "I need your help. I know you have connections within regulatory bodies. If you could just put in a word. I can fix this. Make restitution, anything you want. Just don't let them bury me." "I have a child on the way." Ethan sat in thought for a moment. His experiences with Jonathan ranged from admiration to disappointment, and now hovered on the edge of pity. "Do you even realize what you've done to Scarlett? To your unborn child? You paraded another woman in public while your wife was carrying your future." Jonathan's eyes dropped. His attempt at a stoic posture shattered. "Scarlett was always too good for me. I see that now. But please, Ethan, you know how this world works. If the SEC charges me, my reputation is gone. I won't be able to provide for my child the way I'd planned." Ethan exhaled a long, measured breath. "I can speak to certain people. That might buy you time to come clean about your offshore dealings. But this is not a promise to clear your name. The law is the law. If you choose not to reveal everything, or if you try to manipulate the system, you're on your own. Understand?" Jonathan swallowed, nodding. "Anything. Yes, I'll cooperate." Ethan leaned back in his chair, a flicker of sadness crossing his face. "You also owe Scarlett an apology. You should come to an equitable arrangement for her and the baby. If you don't, I will personally ensure every shred of evidence finds its way to the authorities." Though the words stung, Jonathan recognized that this was likely his only chance at preserving a sliver of dignity. I will," "Thank you, Ethan. I promise I won't forget this." Ethan stood, ending the meeting. "Just don't betray that promise." Leaving the club, Jonathan felt a mixture of relief and dread. He realized that his path to redemption required swallowing his pride, confessing his wrongdoings, and making amends with Scarlett. It wouldn't be easy, especially for a man whose entire life had been built on ambition and a refusal to show weakness. But perhaps in his darkest hour, Jonathan could still find a way to save what truly mattered. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan embarked on a tumultuous journey of damage control. True to Ethan's warning, the SEC's scrutiny didn't relent just because Jonathan sought a private conversation with the CEO. However, a combination of voluntary disclosures, cooperation with investigators, and restitution payments to harmed parties allowed Jonathan some breathing room. He negotiated a settlement, avoiding the worst outcome of a full-blown criminal trial. Yet, the weight of fines and the tarnish on his name was substantial. Shareholders called for a new leadership direction, forcing Jonathan to step down as CEO of his own company. The board's decision was swift. They selected an interim CEO, a level-headed veteran from within the firm's ranks. Jonathan was relegated to an advisory role, strictly symbolic, stripped of real authority. The press had a field day reporting on the fallen star, the man once touted as a maverick entrepreneur, now overshadowed by scandal. Every headline dredged up references to his extramarital affair, painting a cautionary tale of hubris. Scarlett watched these developments with a bittersweet feeling. She couldn't relish his downfall, not fully, because she remembered the gentle soul. She married the man who once pressed roses into her hair on a lazy Sunday afternoon, but the heartbreak he inflicted demanded accountability. Their relationship was far too damaged to repair. Yet, for the sake of their unborn child, Scarlett chose a path of guarded cooperation. Her legal team initiated divorce proceedings, but also put forth a settlement plan that would ensure financial support for their child without stripping Jonathan of his dignity. She insisted on full custody, with the option for Jonathan to visit regularly, provided he made genuine efforts to reform. For weeks, Jonathan hesitated, suspicious that this was a trap. But when no further punitive measures materialized, he realized Scarlett was sincere. The day he signed the divorce agreement, he felt a profound sense of loss, an acceptance that he'd squandered something precious. Cassandra's life took a swift turn as well. After being cold-shouldered by Ethan, she briefly considered courting other wealthy prospects. But her name became tainted by association with Jonathan's scandal, closing many doors. She tried to salvage her social standing by pivoting to philanthropic work, ironically leaning on connections she'd made during her short stint at Jonathan's side. She launched a small foundation for children's literacy, likely a public relations stunt. But genuine or not, it offered her a rebranding opportunity. Over time, she garnered a minor following, though she never regained the commanding presence she once held in Jonathan's spotlight. As for Ethan Blackwell, his role as Scarlett's ally evolved into a deeper bond. Initially, it was a friendship built on mutual respect and empathy. He admired her resilience. She appreciated his unwavering sense of honor. They spent hours discussing philanthropic initiatives, local charities, and innovative ways to support underprivileged communities. Scarlett discovered that Ethan's philanthropic drive stemmed from a personal loss. His sister's untimely passing had sparked his desire to make the world a kinder place. When Scarlett gave birth to her daughter Grace, Colton Ethan was one of the first to visit her in the hospital. He brought a simple bouquet of lilies, a stark contrast to the lavish gifts from well-wishers. Scarlett was touched by the gesture, and the two shared a quiet moment, gazing at the newborn child who carried both Jonathan's lineage and Scarlett's determination. The innocence in Grace's tiny eyes reminded Scarlett of the life-altering responsibilities she now held. In the months that followed, Jonathan attempted to redeem himself as a father. Under supervised visits at first, he cradled Grace with trembling arms, tears brimming. Whether those tears were from guilt or genuine love, Scarlett couldn't fully discern, but she allowed him space to form a bond with their child. He made no further appeals for forgiveness in their marriage. Perhaps he recognized the finality of what he had done. Instead, he focused on rebuilding a semblance of trust with Scarlett, albeit purely in the context of co-parenting. Some days were smoother than others. Jonathan started therapy, a move that surprised even him. In these sessions, he grappled with the childhood insecurities that fueled his relentless drive for success. He confronted how his quest for validation blinded him to the emotional devastation he inflicted on others, particularly Scarlett. Progress was slow but noticeable. Though widely considered a pariah in business circles, Jonathan found pockets of opportunity among lesser-known ventures willing to leverage his experience. He took a consulting job for a small tech startup in Seattle, traveling back to see Grace on weekends. Scarlett, meanwhile, flourished. Freed from the shadows of an unhappy marriage, she embraced her creative passions. She partnered with Marianne DuPont to launch a new, non-profit, Project Heart to Heart, focused on providing emotional and financial support to pregnant women facing abandonment or domestic conflict. The cause deeply resonated with Scarlett's own journey. Donations flowed in, bolstered by endorsements from public figures and even Ethan Blackwell's philanthropic networks. Inevitably, rumors swirled about Scarlett and Ethan's closeness. Blog sites breathlessly speculated on a romance brewing between the philanthropic billionaire and the newly divorced mother. For a long time, Scarlett chose not to address these rumors, partly unsure of her own feelings. She valued Ethan's friendship, cherishing the safety and wisdom he offered. Yet, a new spark slowly kindled, one that felt genuine, built on mutual admiration rather than scandal and ambition. It happened on a crisp autumn day, months after Grace was born, when Ethan invited Scarlett to tour a new community center he funded in a low-income neighborhood. As they walked the halls, discussing expansions for childcare facilities and counseling rooms, their hands brushed accidentally. Scarlett looked up to see a warmth in Ethan's eyes that mirrored her own blossoming affection. In that unspoken moment, they acknowledged a budding intimacy. They didn't rush into anything. Both were keenly aware that Scarlett was still healing from the trauma inflicted by Jonathan's betrayals. Ethan was patient, allowing Scarlett to set the pace. Their first official date was a simple dinner at a modest Italian bistro far from the city's glitzy spots. They talked for hours over homemade pasta, discovering shared values and a shared longing for a quiet, meaningful life free from the superficial trappings of wealth. Through it all, Scarlett remained focused on Grace, determined to raise her daughter with love and stability. To her surprise, Jonathan occasionally showed glimpses of sincerity. One morning, he sent Scarlett a message that read, "Thank you for letting me be part of Grace's life. I won't fail her the way I failed you." The words touched Scarlett, albeit tinged with sadness for what might have been. Public fascination with the scandal eventually subsided, replaced by new headlines about celebrity dramas and political controversies. Scarlett's story became a cautionary footnote. The pregnant wife who stood up against her millionaire husband's audacious betrayal and emerged stronger. Yet, in private, her life was less about being a cautionary tale and more about forging a new path defined by compassion, resilience, and hope. The final chapter of Jonathan's downfall settled like dust, leaving behind lessons learned by everyone involved. Cassandra discovered that opportunism has its limits, especially when confronted by a moral core like Ethan's. Jonathan learned that hollow success devoid of loyalty and integrity eventually collapses. And Scarlett found her voice, ensuring she would never again be overshadowed by someone else's ambition or betrayal. As the years went by, Scarlett and Ethan's relationship quietly deepened. When Grace took her first steps, Ethan was there, cheering with the same joy as Scarlett. He had not assumed the role of Father Jonathan, still held that place in Grace's life, but he brought paternal warmth and guidance in his own subtle way. At community events, the three adults managed a functional relationship. Jonathan, no longer brimming with arrogance, appreciated Ethan's presence, if only because Ethan's support ensured Scarlett and Grace lived comfortably. Eventually, Ethan proposed to Scarlett in an intimate moment far from the public eye, a small candlelit dinner at his estate, with Grace asleep in an upstairs nursery. He dropped to one knee, holding out a simple ring. Tears welled in Scarlett's eyes as she remembered all the heartbreak that preceded this moment. Yet here she was, standing before a man who had shown her unwavering kindness, loyalty, and respect. She said yes, without hesitation. Their engagement remained private for a while, shared only with close friends and family. When the news did leak, it was accompanied by surprisingly little scandal. By then, Scarlett was a respected philanthropist in her own right, Ethan a near-legendary figure of compassionate capitalism. Their union symbolized more than just romance, it symbolized the triumph of decency over betrayal, resilience over heartbreak. On a sunny afternoon, the two married in a small garden ceremony at Marianne Dupont's estate. Grace served as a flower girl, sprinkling rose petals down an aisle lined with close confidants. Jonathan made an appearance, standing at the back, quietly observing the ceremony. He'd come to give his blessing and to be there for Grace on a day that would shape her family's future. He left soon after, but not before exchanging a respectful nod with Ethan and whispering to Scarlett, "I'm truly happy for you." Scarlett's hand tightened around Ethan's, both acknowledging the bittersweet layers of life. In the end, the heartbreak had led her to a place of genuine love, gratitude, and purpose. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of ambition, betrayal, and ultimate redemption. If you were captivated by the scandal of a millionaire flaunting his mistress, only to be shaken by the pregnant wife's shocking arrival, and then moved by the unexpected alliances and personal reckonings, please show your support. Hit that like button if this story kept you on the edge of your seat. Share it with friends who love real-life drama, wrapped in heart-wrenching twists. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. Each tale we bring you dives deep into the complexities of human relationships, offering cautionary lessons and slivers of hope. Your engagement helps us grow and continue sharing these riveting stories. So, like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more compelling dramas.